Intersection Magazine Podcast.
Welcome to Intersection Magazine Podcast. This is an audio summary of the Intersection Magazine for January 2026, Volume 10, Issue 6. So we continued the piece for Time Travel to Make Better Decisions by Brad Slingerland of NZS Capital. This is the second part of what we covered last month. We also featured Founders Freedom section, which is really a collaboration that we normally have with Founders Freedom, where we share bits and pieces of what they're doing or maybe a supplement of their services. We also have a 2025 year in review, where we basically give you a summary of the year that has just passed. The front page covers of our magazine, of course, we're also going a little bit in depth in terms of what particular issues we covered. We also have our investment thesis. This is created from on by the use of artificial intelligence. This is the second piece where we talked about metrics, risks, and strategies. For that, we were dependent on artificial intelligence. So if you want to summarize the theme for the whole year, I think we did dive into relative use of artificial intelligence. 2025 must have been the year for artificial intelligence, at least for Intersection Magazine. So that's what we're going to be covering in this episode. Once again, thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. So as usual for the magazine, we always have to feature a piece in which we talk about some of the services that we offer. It only makes sense to take advantage of the fact that you're publishing a product to highlight some of the services that you offer. And one of those is web design, web hosting service that we have. We wanted to not only talk about that service, but also a course that we have which will teach you basics of web designing, as well as, of course, how to host sites using the tools that exist online. We can do that several ways. You can host using resellers, which is what we do, or you can create systems. You can create actual servers to do the hosting for you. We also basically teach you how to create what you see is what you get websites. We also teach you basics of content management systems such as WordPress, Joomla, and some of the others, Mambo and some of the others. Then we'll take you for what you see is what you get editors. We're basically Dreamweaver freaks, so I really like Dreamweaver. So we'll teach you basics of how to use that. Then we're also going to design by first principles, which means HTML, cascading style sheets, and JavaScript. My skills or my knowledge of JavaScript is limited, so I'll just basically take you through some of the things that I know. And then, given the challenges that we face in our current day, or the developments in artificial intelligence, we'll probably teach you bits and pieces about vibe coding as well. So that's what we cover. We're thinking maybe 2 weeks. The advantage is if you have your own laptop, this will take a much shorter time. But 2 weeks, we're thinking we can teach you the basics of web design and web hosting. In this issue, as we mentioned before, I'm continuing the piece that we shared from NZS Capital on time travel and investment. And then I mentioned before that we used artificial intelligence to help guide us through the process of writing investment theses. And then also we'll be talking about giving you a rough idea about what we covered in the year 2025. And as I said before, 2025 for us turns out to have been a year in which we made great leaps in the use of artificial intelligence, at least for some of our productions. So for the piece on time travel, the key topics for the month will be time loops, and the author of the piece, which is Brad Slingerland, talks about Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, and how this guy keeps waking up on the same day of same day, same time every day, and you can think of what possibilities exist in terms of investment. If the circumstances that you're in are not changing, what are you going to do differently every single day to achieve your investment decisions? Then, of course, he also captures what he calls the mental fog of time travel, in which he says that this particular genre of movies or type of group of movies has usually a sci-fi feel to it. He talks about 12 Monkeys. I haven't watched this, but I think it will be interesting to watch as well. And then he talks about seeing your future self and messages from the future. So that's another another set of movies or another genre that he talks about. Terminator comes or stands out in this particular one, where we're presented a bleak future, and then someone from the future comes to deal with the present and has to eliminate an adversary from the future as well. The possibilities for those who are in investment are vast, especially if you think about what you foresee coming in the future, or maybe if you're in a society that's more developed, that's had its full develop its full potential in artificial intelligence and data, in maybe if you want to call it the 4IR or the internet, the fourth industrial revolution, and then you're going into a society or a country that is less developed, then you're in a sense traveling backwards into the past, and you're bringing yourself from the future to the past, and so that's how I like to think about that particular genre or subgenre of films. He also talks about the importance of awareness. He talks about performing pre-mortems. In a sense, you determine what could go wrong before it happens. And then we also have, we gave you a summary of what Founders Freedom event calendar looks like for 2026. The year looks busy for Founders Freedom, for webinars and breakfasts as well as luncheons. So you can have a look at that for those of you who want to engage with Founders Freedom for reasons which I mentioned before. Founders Freedom focuses on, I think for me, what I see in Founders Freedom is they help you think in terms of succession. We've had the challenge of having not too many companies go beyond the founders or go beyond the first team that establishes the company. So they're solving that problem by helping create healthier organizations by means of having boards, leadership teams, and help training those leadership teams for succession and for longevity. For those of you who are interested in subscribing, or at least in having us host an advertisements for your products or your businesses or your organizations, we've also presented the rates for that option. Then we also have the possibility of collaborations with the podcast. We've got 15-second ads for 25 USD, sponsorship of a season of 12 episodes for 300 USD. You can contact us on the number that we've provided in the magazine. Now for sponsorship for a quarter is about $100. Sponsorship for a season is 300 USD, where season is 3 months. Then we have our web design and host costs. We mentioned before that we teach web design and web hosting, but we also design web pages, and we also help host the pages if you need a trusted host with 24-hour support. We have our 4D methodology, which helps us interact with our clients. We have the discussion phase, the design phase, the deployment phase, and then the demystification or the debugging phase. For those of you who are also interested in some of our literature, we summarized a book by my late father on effective communication. It's a survival kit for effective communication. And then we also have a glossary of terms and acronyms for those of you who are in the consulting business and anybody who in general who just wants to improve how they think about life. Other collaborations exist if you're more on the spiritual side, with our Transition, Transformation, Radical Thinking podcast. The collaborations we mentioned before are mainly for those who are into technology and innovation, because that's what we cover in Intersection Magazine podcast. Now, I also covered the Sozo Summit. I suppose I didn't say too much about this in the front cover. I must have missed this. The Sozo Summit was put together by a group of organizations, including the Japanese the organization that's responsible for Japanese international cooperation in Uganda, as well as Hindsight Ventures. So I've given you a basic summary of why I think the summit was important. And then, of course, describe the structure of JICA. Talked about how I've written before about JICA events and why I think this particular one was important. Then we also summarized a film that has a historic feel. It goes through the relationships between two actors, one a stuntman, the other the actor himself. It has a time travel feel to it, which I think you might enjoy as well. But it also has a strong theme of friendship and deep bonds created by friendship. It is an interesting message that was created by a young man who I met quite a while ago. His name is Solomon Kitumba. It's basically an amazing message for the year 2025 that many of you might enjoy, especially if you've had a tough year. So I encourage you to read that as well. Of course, follow him on LinkedIn, as well as X, if you have X and you use it. Then we go into a basic summary of some of the topics we covered for 2025. So what I'll do, instead of going through individual pieces of the magazine that we covered, that's 12 issues, I'll just basically tell you we covered, for example, the article Farewell to Arms. We talked about DeepSeek. We use DeepSeek as a template for what African businesses can do or African innovation can do. We covered Africa Reimagined. We basically gave you bits and pieces of that meeting or that gathering. Then we also have elite overproduction hypothesis, implications of planning for education, training, how, for example, our education system should be prepared for societal changes, some changes foreseen, some changes unforeseen, and what that means for you. We covered growth stage investment in Latin America. We featured in our Q&A Latifa Mkwawa. We also featured Ivan Karugaba. We did another feature of LinkedIn Notes. We presented our media kit. We also had a Q&A with Daniel Chanda. It's a posthumous Q&A. We talked about reputation. We compared the activities of Stanbic Bank and those of Standard Chartered Bank in Uganda. Startup funding vehicles with TechBuzz Hub. A Q&A with Farouk Mark Machibi. We presented our VC course with AI, of the theoretic or course of venture capital with artificial intelligence. We also went a little bit deeper, describing what that particular course would involve. And then we used artificial intelligence to help us come up with an investment thesis. We went through MTN's annual report. We had 3 months covering that. Differentiating between noise and signals. A popular one was Balaji Srinivasan, Network School. 9 Habits of World-Class Startups. That's from an article from NFX. We also featured a piece called The Return of the Customer. And then we also covered investment decisions. So that's basically what we covered in the January issue of the magazine. The last piece we covered, of course, as we mentioned before, is the investment thesis for small community-centered businesses, which I described for artificial intelligence, and then it gave me tips and ideas about how to best implement this. I found this very useful. It gave me metrics. It gave me summarized my core beliefs. For metrics, it gave me revenue growth, customer retention, inventory turnover, savings growth and group size for savings groups, and then of course profit margins and operational efficiency. For risk considerations, it gave me market and demand fluctuations, regulatory risks, competition and market saturation, operational challenges, and health safety concerns, and then group trust and governance. So I think the tool is really helpful and useful in terms of helping me come up with an investment thesis. And what I like to do, what I did is I like to use that for really simple businesses, and then use that as a template for larger, more complex organizations and businesses or plans that I have. For micro poetry, we have a piece called Magnolia Streets, which is a reference to a particular point in my life in Southern California. I'm not supposed to tell you too much about what this poetry is all about, but I think if those of you who remember or who lived through that part of my life, it will make sense to you. So it's meant to be bits and pieces of mystery that I plan to put together in some kind of anthology. Then we describe, of course, the year that ended in terms of business for the Hope First Bakery, and then we give you the offerings of the Hope First Bakery in terms of some of the things that we do to help serve you better. So that's basically it for January 2026, a summary of the magazine. Once again, it's really been great putting this together for you. We appreciate those of you who are subscribers, those of you who are kind of trying to get your feet wet but are not quite sure whether you should engage with us, but we encourage you to do so. Our content is well thought out. If we don't write the pieces ourselves, we find people who have written good pieces, and then we compile that material into what we put together for the month. So not only will you get something that you can read, but also we summarize what we've put together in terms of this audio podcast. For those of you who want to reinforce what you've already read, or just to give you more options. So once again, I've been your host, Nicholas Kianda, for Intersection Magazine podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing.
Intersection, intersection, magazine. Intersection Magazine Podcast.